Timeline unknown. Somebody's doorbell in Oregon caught what might be, and I want to be very, very careful here, a 7-foot tall, fur-covered, possibly mythological creature walking past a row of recycling bins at 2 in the morning. Hey, it got 3 million views. The comments section is a war zone, and somewhere in the back of your skull, right now, a little voice is whispering, what if? Why does that little voice feel so good? And should we be worried that it does? Hi, I'm Scott Knoll of DreamForge. Let's engage. Today, we're starting with a Bigfoot doorbell video and ending up somewhere a little more uncomfortable. Asking why human beings, the species that put telescopes in orbit and rovers on Mars, are also the species that absolutely cannot get enough of nonsense. Along the way, a 200-year-old hoax that fooled an entire city, a pandemic that played out almost exactly like ours did, 100 years before ours did, and the surprising thing that actually lifts people out of conspiratorial rabbit holes. Stay with me. Okay, the Bigfoot doorbell videos, and there are a lot of them out there, are almost certainly either AI or a guy in a costume. I know that, you know that, but the reason we click on it, that's what's worth taking seriously. Roughly half of Americans believe that at least one conspiracy theory is true. Not, I've heard of one, but actually believe in one. About a third still think the moon landing might have been faked. The original study claiming vaccines cause autism was retracted years ago, and its author was stripped of his medical credentials. And yet, today, that idea is more widespread than when it was first published. And during the COVID pandemic, surveys found that 1 in 4 Americans believe the virus had been deliberately planned by powerful people. For myself, I think there's a decent case that it was inadvertently released by stupid people, but that's a different story. It's hard to call 1 in 4 people who believe in something fringe. That's your neighbor. That's your cousin. That might be, and I say this with no judgment, that might be you on a Tuesday night at 11 p.m. when YouTube autoplays just one more video. And the cost is real. Families have splintered. People have died refusing treatments. Public trust in the institutions we need to actually solve big problems that matter, that trust is cratered. So this is important. But here's what I want to say right at the start. The truth is, and this took me a while to accept, the same machinery in your brain that lets you fall for nonsense is the same machinery that built civilization. Here's the thing that almost nobody tells you. The reason humans are addicted to nonsense isn't a glitch, it's by design. It's a feature. And it's an extremely useful feature most of the time. 2 cognitive systems are doing most of the work. The first is pattern recognition. Your brain is a prediction machine, constantly scanning the world for shapes, sequences, and connections. When you see clouds and think, that looks like a bunny, that's the same system that lets you read a sentence, recognize a friend's face in a crowd, and notice that the rustling in the grass might be a predator on the prowl, one coming after you. We are so good at finding patterns that we find them even when they aren't there. Scientists call that apophenia. It's not a malfunction, it's an overtuned smoke detector is one way to look at it. It's a simple rule of human programming. It's far better to flinch at a stick than be eaten by a snake. The second system is called hyperactive agency detection. Our ancestors were wired to assume things happen because someone or something meant for them to happen. If a branch breaks behind you in the forest, the ancestor who assumed predator lived. The one who assumed, probably just gravity, they had a brief, scary life and no descendants. Combine these 2 systems, the one that lets you find patterns everywhere and assume someone's behind it, and that's why our brains produce both Isaac Newton and people who think the Queen of England was a lizard. It's the same equipment. It's the same functioning. It's just a different aim. I'm sure you remember the Spanish flu of 1918 and maybe the anti-mask league. Now, before you assume this is a modern problem caused by social media, I want to take you back to that October of 1918. There was a flu pandemic, and it was not just the ordinary flu, it was the deadliest pandemic in modern history. It's sweeping the world. In San Francisco, the city makes mask wearing mandatory in public, with predictable results. Almost immediately, a group of citizens forms an organization called the Anti-Mask League. They hold public meetings. Hundreds of people attend. They argue that masks are unscientific, unconstitutional, a violation of their personal liberty. They claim the danger is exaggerated. Some claim the pandemic itself is a hoax. Newspapers print conspiracy theories about who's really pulling the strings. That's 100 years before Twitter, but it's the same arguments, almost word for effing word. I want you to sit with that for a second, because a lot of us spent the last few years convinced that something uniquely broken happened to public discourse during COVID. Something that maybe the internet did to us, something Facebook did to us, something the government did to us. But that's not it. What happened during COVID is what happens every single time human beings are confronted with a frightening, invisible threat that demands collective sacrifice. We argue about it, we doubt it, we invent stories, and some of us decide the people in charge must be lying, because the alternative, that the world is just a genuinely scary place, one that's complicated and dangerously unpredictable, that's harder to live with. Speaking of stories that fool entire cities, when I was researching this episode, I came across a 200-year-old hoax that I had honestly never heard of before. It was the Great Moon Hoax of 1835. So I figured we'd let Def take this one. Def, are you there?
Scott, I am extremely busy. I am presently reconfiguring the isolinear circuits to handle the stress of this year's compulsory fiscal levy.
Def, you doing the tax forms?
That is what I said.
Wish that were conspiracy. Humor me. Take a break and tell us about the Great Moon Hoax.
Very well. In August of 1835, the New York Sun newspaper published a series of articles claiming that the famous astronomer Sir John Herschel had pointed an enormous new telescope at the moon and discovered life. Specifically, forests, oceans, herds of bison, bipedal beavers, and a population of intelligent winged humanoids the articles called manbats. The articles were detailed. They cited real scientific journals. They invoked a real, respected astronomer who, importantly, was on a research expedition in South Africa and could not be reached for comment. The Sun's circulation exploded. Crowds gathered in the streets to discuss the moon people. Several churches debated sending missionaries. The articles were entirely fabricated by a reporter named Richard Adams Locke. They were exposed within a few weeks. The Sun never apologized. Its circulation stayed high. Locke became famous. I find this instructive, Scott. The hoax succeeded not because the readers were stupid. They were not. It succeeded because they wanted it to be true. A universe with manbats in it is a more interesting universe. And a more interesting universe is, evidently, what people will pay for.
Thanks, Def.
I am returning to the fiscal levy.
Good talk. That's the part that always gets me. The hoax succeeded because people wanted it to be true. We don't fall for nonsense because we're broken. We fall for nonsense because the world without it can feel flat, empty, unauthored. The conspiracy theory says someone is steering this. The hoax says there's wonder out there. The Bigfoot video says the world still has secrets and we can learn them. Take those things away, and what are you left with? A universe of impersonal forces, random chance, complex systems, and bureaucratic spreadsheets. Even, apparently, compulsory fiscal levies. Of course, people would rather have man-bats. So if this is the real hunger underneath the nonsense, wonder, meaning, the sense that the world has hidden depths and someone is in charge of them, then debunking is never going to win. You can't fact-check a feeling. Here's where I want to land with this, because I do have a hopeful answer, but it's not the one you might expect. For most of my life, I assume that the way you fight nonsense is with evidence. You correct the record, you cite the studies, you point at the retraction. It turns out, and I think research backs this up now, that direct debunking often doesn't work. And sometimes it actually entrenches the belief you're trying to counter. Because when you tell someone they're wrong, you're not really arguing about facts. You're attacking them and their tribe. You're leaving a big bag of flaming poop on their front porch. How is that ever going to help the situation? But here's what may work. Two things, and they go together. The first is making evidence-based wonder more compelling than the conspiracy. Carl Sagan understood this. The actual universe, black holes, deep time, the fact that the iron in your blood was forged inside a dying star a billion years before the Earth ever existed. The real universe is more astonishing than any hoax ever invented. A real photograph of Saturn's rings taken by a spacecraft a billion miles from home is more wondrous than the man-bats of 1835. The truth has goosebumps in it. We just have to remember to tell it that way, to treat the real world like the miracle it actually is. The second is harder, and I think it matters more. The reason that people fall into conspiracy communities is that those communities welcome them. They say, you're smart for noticing, you're brave for questioning, you belong here, and together we can see what others can't. That's a powerful drug. Even more, it's like food to the starving and warm fire for those lost in the cold and the dark. And too often, the response from scientific and educational communities has been the opposite. It's gatekeeping, condescension. Hey, you wouldn't understand the math, or you're wasting my time. If we want people to come back to evidence-based thinking, we don't just need better facts. We need warmer rooms. We have to make the room of curiosity and inquiry more welcoming and more supportive than the rabbit hole. We have to be the place where you're smart for noticing and brave for questioning, and you're welcome here among us, whether you can do the math or not, because no truth can live outside of community, and no fact can withstand the assault of the mob. That's the hopeful part. Not that people will stop being curious about Bigfoot. I hope we never do. But that the same hunger that moves people to join conspiratorial communities can drive them into scientific ones. Help them strive toward genuine wonder, rise into the kind of inquiry that built telescopes and vaccines and the device you're watching this on. The inner light is the same. We just have to give it a better place to shine. So here's my question for you, and I really do want to hear the answer. I'll give you two versions. Pick whichever one fits. Easy version. What's something you used to believe in that turned out to be nonsense, but you still kind of miss it? The hard version, what's the most wondrous true thing you know? Drop it in the comments. I read them. I'll be there. Hey, if this gave you something to chew on, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from coming up. And if you love speculative fiction where hope and big ideas win out over darkness, that's what we do at DreamForge magazine. The link is in the description. I'm Scott Knoll. Thanks for engaging. And Def, if you're still listening, please tell me you're using the correct deduction for the home office space.